Well, I'm so impressed by your school, by the subjects you are learning, by your teachers, by the way you act, and I can tell you why. Not because I still remember my high school years, which was quite a few years ago, but I also taught in Detroit, in its southwest side, for 12 years. So I know what it's like. You can see this great hair, partially from this kids. So my school was not even close to what you have here. So take advantage of this opportunity in your life, because who knows what life will bring. But you have a great head start now. Well, since I started speaking about my background, it has something to do with the subject of my presentation. Now, let me make sure that the microphone is held without disturbance. Do you hear well? How should I keep my microphone like this? Or like this? Or like this?
That
yes?
way.
That's right. Great. Well, how many of you noticed that I speak that accent? That's it. Nobody? Well, I'm an immigrant. I came to the United States when I was 28. I spoke no English at all. When I came in 1990, in December, I mistakenly assumed that Americans understand German. I spoke German. Well, they don't. So I had to learn English quickly. I came as a refugee. I'm still not quite certain as to why the US Embassy in Moscow, I was born and raised in Moscow, gave my mother and me status of a refugee, probably because my mom belonged to a Baptist church, which was at the time considered religious minority. So my mom and I came together. We had 3 suitcases with us, and one of them got lost along the way. So we started our lives with just 2 suitcases, on a equivalent of $200, and that's all. So a typical immigrant story, in a way. We ended up in a small enclave, small town within a greater city of Detroit. Yes, the term is in the US. Sometimes municipalities are devised so that they are part of greater municipalities. So there is a small city of Manhattan and the greater city of Detroit. Now, do you know what state the city of Detroit is in? Yes, exactly. Yes, Michigan. So it's a poor neighborhood. Still is. It used to be populated mostly by Polish immigrants. Well, some Ukrainians, some Serbs, but mostly Polish. Now it's different. It's mostly Bangladesh populated, and Vietnamese, Pakistanis, Indians. But there are still some Polish immigrants. So that was my start. My first foreign language was not even English in the United States, but Polish. I had Polish friends, and we got along quite well. My background is in music, so naturally I later on joined a Polish band. But my first job in the United States was playing organ in an all-black church. I was the only white guy in church, in fact in the neighborhood. This is how it happened. We arrived on Friday night, and on Sunday morning, my mom, who was, as I said, a devout Christian, Baptist, decided to explore the neighborhood. And that's what we did. We went around that small town, and we got attracted by the sound of organ coming out from the church. We stepped in, it was all black congregation, singing and swaying and dancing the congregation reacts to gospel music. I see some heads nodding. It's encouraging. Anyway, the congregation gets carried away. Otherwise, it's not a good service. And if somebody faints and drops, it scared me, but to the congregation was a good sign. The Holy Spirit came down on this place. So I was shocked, partially, but very much attracted by music. I love music. And so when the service was almost over and the congregation started to exit the church, I came to the organist and showed that I would like to play. And he let me. And so I picked up the last song, and the congregation finally noticed that I was playing, not the organist. And so that's how I got my first job. I started to play piano, and then when the organist left the church, I was appointed the minister of music. That's a big name for a small job. But anyway, it was a job. As I mentioned, I also played with the Polish band. So on Friday night, I was rehearsing with the church. On Saturday night, I was playing with the Polish band in a bar. And on Sunday morning, I played in the church. Isn't it nice? My first full-time job I got in 1992 with the George Public Schools. I became a music teacher. Well, I was mentioned my great hair. Besides being a very challenging job in itself, we're talking about middle school. You're older kids, right? You're more mature. But when we're talking about 10, 11, 12, 13 years old, in a very troubled neighborhood, or very troubled city, you've got addiction, you've got social problems of all kinds, drugs, gangs, violence, it was all there. So pretty much American society in retrospect. We had pretty much a majority of Latino kids, about a quarter of black kids, close to that white kids, plus I'm receiving 100% by the way, so keep on that, because the percentage varied from year to year. But we also had some Chinese immigrants, we had Arabs, we had Native Americans, so I had the entire kind of population of the United States in my class, so to speak. So how do we deal with this multitude of nationalities, ethnicities, religions, cultures in the United States, and in fact anywhere else? One of the approaches is called multiculturalism. It's one of the main approaches, by the way. What is multiculturalism? Basically, it stipulates that it's not enough to merely tolerate different cultures. It's not enough to simply give the same rights and opportunities to different ethnicities, different races, religions, cultures, for that matter. You've got to reinforce their rights. You've got to uphold these rights. You've got to sometimes give a preference to these minorities because of the past injustices, like it's the case with Latin Americans or Native Americans, or because of the minority status of these groups. And so that's pretty much what multiculturalism stipulates, what that's all about. However, there are so many interpretations of this subject, of this approach. And there is a lot of politicization of this approach as well. I should say, you're mature enough, students to read that, to understand that hardly any social aspect of social life is being politicized to someone's benefit and benefit. So let's see if we can move forward. Yes, we can. Well, this is an iconic painting of one of the American earliest artists, David Keith. As you can see, he depicted all kinds of animals here and children, but what you see in the background now. Well, it depicts William Penn, who later became the governor of the state of Pennsylvania, named after him, negotiating with Native Americans. So the point of this picture, of this painting is, well, if a bull and lion and tiger can live together, why can't we see even Indians and us can live together in peace and harmony? The painting is called Peaceful Kingdom. And so that's what America meant to be. That's what it inspired to be. There has been always dualism in American culture and approaching newcomers. One is called nativism, stipulating that America is a nation that needs to kind of set in and base its values on the values of those who came before us. And the other approach is that, well, we've got to embrace the newcomers. We've got to let them in and make them feel at home in America. There has been very strong pushback against newcomers at different times, not only now, not 10 years ago. When the Germans started to come and there was a great pushback against German immigrants. When the Irish immigrants started to come in the middle of the 19th century because of famine in Ireland, there was a strong push against Irish immigrants. Later on, Poles, Jews, immigrants from this part of Europe started to come to America. And so, not that long ago, in fact, I worked with a teacher who was old enough to remember signs on the houses. For granted, no Irish or Jews into blood. She was old enough to remember the segregation when fountains, drinking fountains, were designed for the whites and for the blacks. So, no matter what approach was very prevalent in America at the time, American society used to be called melting pot, so to speak. Melting pot is pretty much depicted by this water. It's on Mulberry Street in New York City at about the turn of the century. And you can see all kinds of species here. Actually, just a few minutes ago, I been to a music classroom, and the students were listening to a piece by Gershwin. And it reminded me that Gershwin was, his real name was Gershwin, and came from what is now Ukraine. It was Russian Empire at the time. And he was born already in the United States, but his parents were from the former Russian Empire. His parents never learned to speak English well, by the way, so did my mom. And she never left the country to the US. But Gershwin changed his name to Gershwin, and he became the first American composer who, why is he considered the first American composer? Not because he was born in America, not because he was the one who published his works in America, but because he somehow managed to incorporate all these different sounds of America in his music. That's what makes him American. And so it comes to the next question: what does it mean to be American? And if we have time, we can talk about it a little bit in the next presentation. So basically, the idea of America, original idea was, well, if you can come to the US, please do so, but it's your own risk and your own responsibility. You don't have to assimilate if you don't want to. You don't have to integrate. If you feel comfortable staying in your community, fine, but nobody's going to provide you, nobody's going to accommodate you. And so most immigrants have no other choice but to And it wasn't that long that it was very much practiced in most families, immigrant families. Well, can anyone help me with translation of this? Pluribus unum. What is this? Anybody? Pluribus unum. Before you think about it. No. It means out of many, one. Out of many, one. You know, by the way, one of the cultural shocks in Hungary, can I share with you? I'm departing Hungary soon, in just a couple of months, to start my work in Fiji. But anyway, one of the cultural shocks was when I discovered that most Hungarians don't even realize that people with the last names such as Turk, Gur, Nemet, Boros, Olas, Michael, Horvath, very common names, but they might indicate that these people originally came from all these different places. So you are a nation, one, out of many, one, in a way too. Is it an absurdity? No? Yes? Maybe. Anyway, out of many, one. That was our nation history. Now again, can you require that all Ugandans simply take off their cultural attire, forget about their culture, their traditions, and assimilate, forgetting about who they used to be and what their cultural background was? Can be requested? Probably not. I mean, even if someone tries to do that, like adopting an Americanized name, it would be difficult, right? But at the same time, should we be able to ask questions? Why did you come to America? What are you going to contribute? Or are you going to take away from us whatever we created for our nation? Just like a village? What are you hiding in your background? All these questions became all more relevant after 9/11, September 11th, terrorist attacks. And so many Americans are still shy about this approach. Well, we shouldn't hurt their feelings and all that. But, you know, many Americans believe that it's probably time to ask, don't, in the words of John Kennedy, American president, who said, do not ask what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. So it still holds true for the newcomers. Okay, how many of you have been to the United States? Here's your answer. 1, 2, 3. That's all? How many have been to England? United Kingdom? Okay, more. How many have been to Poland? Okay. How many of you have been to England? Not touching. Anyway, where would like a number, be it public number or private number, usually what happens now, you hear is para español, primo numero uno, or primo dos. And so that's what it says. Well, why am I supposed to press 1 for Spanish or for English? Why not have many options for all other immigrants if you have one option for the Spanish speakers? Is it fair? Well, this is iconic painting by Graham Wood, who lived and actually painted this almost exactly 100 after 100 years after they painted his kingdom. There is nothing fancy about this picture or these people. There is something like a church in the background, right? These people look very ascetic. There is a fort, like a symbol of hard work. So they look like a traditional couple, right? Even though in reality this guy is the owner of Mr. Wu, and this is actually his daughter. But anyway, it doesn't matter. It looks like a traditional couple, man and woman, like family, working hard with a religious background, Christian background, right? Well, the rich work is done. There is no church in the background. And anyway, that's the point. That's a mockery of what has happened to America, the eyes of that painting. You get the point, right? Now, what do we do with all these thousands and thousands of Mexican, not just Mexican immigrants, but immigrants from everywhere, from other Latin American countries, from outside of the United States or from outside of Western Hemisphere? What do we do with all? How does multiculturalism work with that? Well, let me give you a brief overview of the immigration system. I don't want to lose your attention though, because you are suspiciously quiet. Are you with me? Are you listening?
Yeah.
Are you listening?
Yes.
Okay, good enough. Well, here comes the boring stuff, right? Before 1882, there was no restriction on immigration at all. In 1882, for the first time, an act, a law was introduced, which is known as Chinese Exclusion Act. The law prohibited the Chinese from immigrating into the United States. Before 1917, that was the only prohibition in place. However, most other, not just nations, but categories of immigrants were banned from coming to the United States. That is, people who were sick. There was an inspection on Ellis Island in New York Harbor, where immigrants were inspected on whether they were sick or stable or would provide for themselves, they had funds, basic funds, they had benefits, and so on and so forth. So it was a basic inspection of the newcomers. But then, after 1917, the Americans started to look more suspiciously at the newcomers, especially from that part of Europe, this part of Europe, because of the revolution in Russia. They didn't want the spread of communism. And besides, somebody noticed that the majority of population in New York City don't speak English. And so by 1921, the immigration was severely restricted. In fact, only those immigrants whose predecessors had been in the States already were allowed to come. For example, if there, according to the census of 1890, if there were, say, for example, 10% of Norwegians in the United States, so 10% of all immigrants admitted to the United States would be from Norway, and so on and so forth. So mostly immigrants were allowed from Western Europe. Now, can we say that we are the nation of immigrants? How many of you have no opinion whatsoever? Raise your hands if you are sitting shy to raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Well, that's the first step to leadership. You've got to develop leadership now. By raising your hands. Yes, I believe something. No, I don't believe that. Think about it. Anyway. Well, we are a nation of immigrants, but for all 60 years, immigration to the United States was restricted severely. And considering the size of the United States or our nation, immigration between 1924 and 1965, when the immigration has changed dramatically. It's a long period for a young country like ours. So the immigration was severely restricted. In 1952, about 1 million of immigrants from Latin America were deported. Plus, don't forget, there was a Great Depression. Immigrants started to come for obvious reasons. There was a war, and then the laws became so restrictive of immigrants that it was very difficult to nationalize. But then in 1952, some politicians started to see that something needs to change in the way they allow immigrants to come to the United States. Well, the reason was the war, and many people who used to be considered as displaced persons, refugees. So in 1952, America for the first time introduced something that an legislation that allowed immigrants, refugees to come to the United States. And in fact, it allowed the president to admit whatever refugees he deemed appropriate to now to come to the United States. How was it related to Hungary directly? In 1956, several thousands of Hungarians were allowed to come to the United States as a result of this provision in the law. Then, in 1965, President Lyndon Johnson signed into law a new Immigration Act. Before signing, he was speaking, just like I did now, explaining the meaning of this law. He said, it's not a major law, it's not going to change anything. Well, he was wrong. I don't like he was lying, he probably did very much. But this law profoundly changed the immigration in the United States and political landscape of the country. It profoundly changed. It might be irreversible change, but for better and for worse. The Act, to simplify, the Act banned all the quotas based on original percentage of the population in the US. It basically revised the Act of 1924. From then on, immigrants from all countries could come. In fact, some were not allowed to send immigrants because there have been already so many immigrants from this country. For example, from Mexico or from India at certain points. But pretty much the law stipulated that 20,000 immigrants were allowed to come from one single country. It's always been violated. It's never been the case. There have always been more immigrants who came to the United States with one of these quotas. So now we are dealing not just with legal immigration, but the problem is now with illegal immigration. There's a difference between the two. And some politicians don't want to speak about this difference, but there is. Well, some immigrants just don't feel like assimilating. They say, well, it used to be our land, Arizona, New Mexico, California, we just take it back. That's historical justice, right? We don't want to speak English. But how you like this kind of to marry? Do you know who this guy is?
Obama?
Huh?
Obama?
Oh, yes. Well, you want it or not, but multiculturalism as a way of living together is a way of life in the United States. And we see now, our president is multiculturalist. His father was a Kenyan physician, who came to the United States to study. So, how do you describe multiculturalism in terms of its contribution to the way in the United States? Well, the picture is mixed, to be honest with you. The United States is a huge nation. We are big. We can accommodate that many immigrants. Immigrants have a lot more support nowadays than it used to be. When I came, for 2 months, we received some support from a local organization, which was near the bankrupt at the time. So we received $10 a week for one expense, plus food stamps. Not much. And then, for the next few months, following next month, we had to apply for welfare, social subsidy. I'm probably the only one of the foreign service who experienced that. So my cultural shock was from visiting this office in the United States, where people would sit and complain about how inefficient the system is, wearing gold chains and rings. So to accommodate all these immigrants, governments, local governments, and federal governments came up with a system of support, social support, financial support, logistical support to different groups of population. So it's very difficult to identify each one of them. There is a support in terms of affirmative action to African Americans. Basically, it gives preference to those young people from African American communities who would like to go to college or university. There are special classes for non-English speakers. All of them are translated into foreign languages. So this kind of support is given to the communities, and of course it doesn't come for free. It's expensive. So not all Americans are happy with that, and it's still to be seen, or as they say in the US, the jury is still out on whether multiculturalism works. We believe that it does. We believe that it can make it better. All of us, if we respect each other, if we support each other. That's what makes America strong. And so, on that slide, I would like to conclude my presentation and open up for questions, because you are suspiciously quiet. And I don't want to lose your interest. And I understand that it's probably not very interesting like this. I'm not able to. Anyway, guys, questions, please. Well, by the way, any questions, it could be personal, professional, related to anything, multiculturalism or not, doesn't matter. Okay, all you need. Never say She gets a team. Anybody else?
We can talk about the best thing that we have taken part in so far in Hungary. Could you talk about the best event you have taken part in so far in Hungary?
The best event, well, there were a few. I can, well, if I have to select one, it would probably be this. I attended the opening of the Air Theatre. It was March 1st, 1913. And the performance that I saw, ballet, was absolutely beautiful. But what shocked me, the rest of the experience in the country, was that before the performance, the audience sang the national anthem without any accompaniment, without any anybody leading the choir. The audience, the people, started from the same pitch, and they did it beautifully from the beginning to the end. That was shocking. You guys don't realize what the culture means. I would like to see how that would work in some other nations, including our country. Most Americans don't know what the Statsman Land, and there are 4 verses in the Statsman Land, not just one. Speaking of which, this first verse of the Statsman Land answers the question, all say that the Statsman Land can play or the land of the kingdom of the day. Question mark. All say does it? So where's the answer? The answer is in the second verse, the third verse. Look it up. It's a beautiful point. Anybody else? How many further questions? Yes.
Yes,
What is your impression of Hungarian people?
My impression of Hungarian people, they're very serious and many times very shy when it comes to questions. No, I mean it. My generalization of Hungarian people is that they're serious people. They're able to sit quietly and listen to the presentation at a beautiful age of 14, 15. They're wonderful scientists, they're researchers. I was a member of the full-time board, and so I could see how many wonderful scientists you have. It doesn't come out of nothing, it comes from culture. So if one is culture, one is science, then it's a big deal. Yes, please.
My question is, what do you think the benefits of studying in the United States?
Can you say more than that?
My question is, in what ways can we benefit from studying in the United States after immigration?
Well, it's a wonderful question. I hope it will not be first, but it's a great question. How can you benefit from studying in the United States? Well, American higher education offers some benefits that might not be available, really available in American universities. I can tell because I experienced both. I went to Wayne State University 2 times in Detroit. I had 2 master's degrees, and I went to study as an exchange student, graduate student, to the University of another name. I don't want to say anything negative about it. It was a great school in Germany. But the difference was in how the lectures were conducted. In the school in Germany, when I came to the lecture, the professor was sitting like mumbling to himself. And students were quietly sitting, not involved in any discussion. In the United States, it's opposite. Students are involved, engaged, directed. If they are expected to sit quietly, they will not go to this class. choose a big school in an urban area, or you can choose a small college in somewhere countryside, and they offer an excellent education. They have to. They have to because it's a marketplace. If they don't offer quality education, they go out of business. And by the way, once you establish yourself as a student, most likely you will qualify for a scholarship or fellowship or grant of some kind. That also is money available. You just need to take the time and apply. But the opportunities, financial support is there. I understand that it's difficult to collect the initial funds to go to the States to start. But once you're there, you are most likely to you'll qualify for some kind of assistance. So consider. And by the way, since I'm on the page, we have educational advising here in Budapest. Bars also in 80s. Please check it out. Check it out. It's available, it's free. Just go to this person, Cornelia Nikis, and she's wonderful. She knows everything. So check it out. Google Education USA. Wow, Education USA. There's an advising center available in Budapest, in Page, in Leicester, and that's as well. One question.
Yes, have you found the last suitcase since you came to the USA?
Where?
Here? In front of you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So yes, you said you lost your suitcase when you were in the USA. Have you ever found that one, the last one?
No. My situation is going to Cuba because the connecting flight was from the airport to Cuba, but I don't know that anymore.
So my question is, why does it take so long to get the green card to the USA, or just to be able to study in the USA?
Why does it take so long?
Yes.
It doesn't take so long.
They say it's so hard to study and to be a legal immigrant.
Oh, that's what you mean. Well, I thought you were asking about education immigrants. It's easy. Becoming an immigrant has a different method.
For a local citizen with a citizenship and to be an 100% American citizen, it's hard.
Well, not really. No. I think, in fact, if I can be honest, it's way too easy to nowadays. It's not easy to relinquish the citizenship. But to become an American, well, there are many ways. I'm not going to advise you as to how to do this, but having been a consular officer in Jamaica, my first assignment was in Jamaica. And I worked as a consular officer, so I administered cases for non-immigrants and immigrant visas. So I could see all kinds of different stuff going on with our immigration system and without immigration enforcement. That's all we can. So I think we have an opposite problem. We have to be more stricter when it comes to admitting people who are born. Just to give you an illustration, citizenship test, English portion of the test. Do you know what it was like? To check my proficiency in English, I had to write a sentence, the following sentence. I had studied the Constitution. End of text. How many of you would be able to write this? I have studied the Constitution. Well, we are shy, probably most of you. But, this sentence was repeated time and time again. So you have to either be stupid or, how can you not be able to write this? I'm not even talking about grammar or anything, just I have studied the Constitution. position wants to take because of dangerous, politically it's deadly. If you are a Democrat, speaking, even saying illegal immigration is dangerous nowadays. That's the word. Well, it's no secret anymore that most immigrants, and certainly most illegal immigrants, when they naturalized, work for the Democrats. So that's basically the reason why there is not enough done to stop illegal immigration. On the other side of the equation is that many businesses benefit from employing cheap labor, that is illegal immigrants, and these businesses often support Republicans. And so right now, there are so many illegal immigrants, some 11 million. How do you report those things? And so, what President Obama offered, he offered a temporary suspension of the deportation to people who have come into the country who have missed their jobs. And so the idea is that these people contributed to our society, so it's not fair to expel them. They have a good chance of becoming true Americans and Mexicans. But it's still not clear what to do with other immigrants. Their fathers, uncles, children. So it's a very complicated story. It's politically complicated. During the political race, by the way, in 2016, Washington debate, every time candidate for president raises the issue of immigration, you will hear allegations about immigrants. We'll deport them. We will introduce a system like e-verifying card, employment, requirement employment, for example, a card that would enable every employer to verify the status. Well, they say, eventually, if you don't have a job, if you don't have a place to stay, you'll go back right to your country. But many times, immigrants, illegal immigrants, or these families, they have businesses. They have very little to do with the country of their origin. So it becomes even more complicated. And politically, it's nearly impossible to do. So that's a long answer to your simple question. Yes.
Thank you for the speech. Would the attaché agree on that by lifting some, for example, economic sanctions from the countries most concerned in the issue of immigration and in the issue of refugees would decrease the number of people migrating to countries?
You're in the way, say it again.
Would the attaché agree on that by lifting some, for example, economic sanctions from the countries most concerned in the issue of immigration and refugees would decrease the number of people immigrating to, for example, the USA or to the European Union?
Well, we don't have sanctions against most of the countries that send immigrants, such as Mexico. We have sanctions against Iran, we have sanctions against Russia. But we don't have any sanctions against most other countries from where the immigrants come. So, sanctions have nothing to do with that. If you're looking about economic assistance, we do all we can to assist Latin American countries, again, specifically Mexico, that produces immigrants. But, well, unfortunately, the economic situation in Mexico is not great. And job-based violence is a factor, and so many Mexicans try to escape this violence. So, I mean, I don't know what else to say.
does the attaché believe that 911 attack changed U.S. public's opinion towards different cultures and immigration issues?
Yes, absolutely. In fact, one of my slides was on that. Yes, it's changed dramatically the attitude towards immigration in general and immigration from specific cultures and regions specifically. But there's a general thought in the United States politics that, well, that it can prevent this from happening in the future if we bring more immigrants from this country. So we show them that we appreciate their culture. So, the last question, Harry? The last, the best. No? Okay, that's it for that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tarakhovsky, for your wonderful presentation. And dear students, now we will inform you about the results of the quiz as well as about the patchwork competition. First, we will inform you about the quiz winners.
The third place goes to 10R. Well, I was just instructed that there is no second place. There's just two first places. Is it possible? No, but for today it is possible. And so, the first place goes to 10 B and 10 C. I just heard the song of Robert Hart a few minutes ago. And so the third place goes to 9C. Keep it all together. The second place goes to 10. The first place goes to 7. C.
other rooms between Dmitri, who spent 1 year in the United States, and I'm going to give you some information about American quilts and how they